Welcome everyone. My name is Vineet Malhotra, and once we start a very special show in association with the business world. Over the past few months, we have had our finger on the pulse of the business world. The economy has been in an unprecedented mode in the last few months. In fact, the entire 2020 has been more of an astray when it comes to development or progress. But yet, there are stories of valor, there are stories of progress, there are stories of disruptions, and there are stories of diversification. And in the same breath and with the same spirit, me and Anurag, we've a number of people who are leaders, entrepreneurs, and business thinkers alike, and they have given us some brilliant ideas about how to take the country forward with respect to specific business that they are a part of. So, without wasting further time, let me introduce our brilliant panel for today. Joining me on the broadcast is Mr. Ankur Bansal. He's the co-founder and director of Black Soil. Mr. Vikram Nani, co-founder of Tamarind, is also joining us. Ms. Dr. Inder Maurya, CEO of Foreign OPD. It's a brilliant concept that he's working on. Me and Anurag will get into that during the show. And of course, also with us on the platform is Mr. Sanjivkumar, co-founder and CEO of Kuberan's House. And last but not the least, my partner in crime, my co-host, Dr. Anurag Batra, chairman and editor-in-chief of Business World and Exchange for Media Group. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Lovely to have you. Let me start by asking a very innocuous question to Inder Maurya. Inder, you've been on our show before, and diversification is something which has been paramount during the pandemic. People have tried to shed the old and embrace the new, and some of these people have had no choice. Tell our viewers about the business that you are into, and what kind of a disruption are you looking to cause?
Well, thank you, Vineet. See, if you see the adaptability in COVID time was by forced upon us, and we had to survive that. So as far as my business was concerned about medicine, so for that, when like the senior doctors were getting infected, the corona warriors were getting infected, during that time, the old age concept of telemedicine, which was not valid in India till April 2020, became valid. So the Medical Council of India, the erstwhile Medical Council of India, now is called as the Board of Governors, they gave approval for telemedicine. So before April 2020, telemedicine was illegal in India in the truest sense. That is it was not mandated by the government. But now, during this COVID time, telemedicine consultation has gone to the scale up. More than 2 lakh consultation was done by the public-private partnership, including AIMS, SGPJ. My company itself did over 20,000 medical consultation, and our efforts were endorsed by none other than Mr. Ramdas Athavale, the Minister for Social Justice and Empowerment, because health is a social justice matter. So during this time, so I would believe that telemedicine was the biggest disruption which happened during COVID time, but bridge across the rural and the urban divide as well, because we know the situation is a little bit skewed. We have got a lot of doctors and healthcare infrastructure in the city side, and in the rural side it is less. So none better than the telemedicine, which plays a role. In that, what we were doing is about the second medical opinion, the COVID crisis solving, the COVID related pulmonary fibrosis, which was an upcoming, you can say, consequence of a pulmonary consequence of the COVID. So these are all things which were the patients were confused. So we were creating massive awareness, solving the doubts, anxiety, and last is the vaccine thing. So vaccine, how are we curious about the vaccine? Why the vaccine? So all these things can possible if disruption like telemedicine. So I think we have done very well in the telemedicine thing, and for that the government has played a very, very key role as well. So that they were very prompt enough, quick enough to validate this concept of telemedicine, because medical legal issues are a lot in telemedicine. So now that has been taken care of. So now we doctor can give you prescription on WhatsApp, we can give you Zoom consultation. So all these things were taken care of thanks to the Modi government in the very prompt, swift action they worked out. It was, you can say, in the first lockdown only. So I think that was the biggest achievement. And telemedicine is a big market. It's a $10 billion market. So again, today when we are discussing about the economy thing, so then telemedicine is really to add a lot, because the highly individual doctors where we can give consultation pan world. And that is why, like, since India believes in Vasudhaiva Kutumba, so the whole world is ours. So definitely we can cater to the full globe patients with our Indian doctors, and then earn a good amount of foreign exchange as well. So it's economy wise as well as health wise, everything has been taken care of by our doctors, and thanks to the leadership of our Prime Minister, who has, like, taken this thing to a very great level. So I would say the telemedicine is the biggest disruption,
Dr.
which we
Maurya,
have contributed a small part of it, but still.
Dr. Maurya, what I want to ask is, in the COVID times, in the first 6 months, the loss to the healthcare industry was itself more than $2 billion, because there was a lockdown. People were a little afraid to go to hospitals. Do you think over the next few months, the increase in telemedicine and teleconsulting for health will in some way recoup that loss? Because people stopped going to their neighborhood GP for other ailments, they stopped going to their hospitals. So do you think, while you talk of a $10 billion industry, in the last 6.5, 7 months, the healthcare industry lost more than $2 billion, more like $2.5 billion. What do you think over the next 6 months, telemedicine can grow to be able to compensate this loss? Dr. Maurya?
Well, telemedicine can, yes, yeah. So telemedicine, yes, Dr. Batra. So telemedicine definitely is going to bridge up the gap, because as I've mentioned previously also, now since the doctor community and the healthcare infrastructure is more so in the city side, in the urban side. So this bridging of the gap between the urban and the rural can be fulfilled by our telemedicine thing. Second thing, those spaces where the doctors were not available. I'm not talking about the primary healthcare. Primary healthcare infrastructure has to build up. Here we are talking about the second medical opinion. Here we are talking about the high-end super specialty illnesses like cancer, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson, all those diseases where we don't have the super specialty doctors in the city. There, this bridge can be built up. And when I talk about, see, it is still in infancy, because just 6 months back only we got a formal validation for telemedicine. So it's a long way to go. I was just giving you a global perspective how big this industry is, and eventually will help us to solve even to a great extent our economic issues as well, because second medical opinion, which is an upcoming thing in India, well, globally it is a big industry. That's what I was talking about, the second $10 billion. So those losses which we have faced, even the Niti Aayog chairperson, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, also was saying that we are reaching to the pre-COVID level in the next quarter or maybe second quarter. So things are looking very optimistic.
You think that we are on the verge, we are perhaps on the cusp of a global medical transformation today? And, what medical apparatus existed, what medical outlook existed before pre-COVID is going to be entirely different from what we will have in the next 6 months or so?
Well, this question can be best answered in this way, that the mindset have best changed. Now the global community has come more closer. You see, with the pace with which the vaccine was made is phenomenal. Previously, it used to take 20 years, 25 years for the vaccine to come. And in this time, if you see, in a record time of not even a year, we got a vaccine almost, and vaccine came into the picture. So I would say the world has come more closer in the working together. India has also evolved, because previously we used to spend less than 1% in the GDP. Today we are talking about spending 3% of the GDP in 2022, and by 2027 we're looking a highly optimistic figure of more 10% spending on the healthcare. So I would say
Dr. Maurya, what I want to ask you is that while the vaccines are coming in, we are confident of their efficacy and the distribution, but there are still some questions about their efficacy, because anyway 90% of the patients would recover from COVID. So 95%, of course, every life matters, but what is your viewpoint on the efficacy of the COVID medicines?
Well, if you see, Dr. Batra, the sample has been really poor. So I would not, say that the sample size had been very good. In India also, when we are running the trial with AIMS, biotech vaccine and everything, the sample size is too less to comment on. But then you see, we have to try. We are getting more and more into phase 3 trial. Regarding efficacy, it still cannot be commented much upon, because the sample size is too less. Nevertheless, vaccine it is being developed. It will be given to the people, because something is better than nothing. Although mortality rate, you're absolutely right, that it's less than 2% in India, and there is another school of thought that are we endangering the people by giving the vaccine? But I would not say that, because we see how panic stricken the society became during COVID time. So yes, everything has got its consequences, but we would not just ignore that thing, that the vaccine is not going to do anything. It is going to do a good thing, because now we are
Okay,
seeing in
Dr.
the
Moria.
UK
Coming
yeah.
coming from a doctor and somebody who understands this domain and is deeply into the healthcare system gives us some kind of confidence. Let us go to Ankur Bansal. Ankur, the acceleration of entrepreneurship in COVID has been real. While we saw a lot of startups not being able to raise money, or the sectors they were in being tepid, but at the same time, it was made up by new startups being created, record levels of fundraising, and more aspirations being created through solving problems that COVID threw at us. So give us a sense of what Black Soil does for our viewers, and how have you pivoted in the last 6 to 8 months, and where you are headed.
Sure. No, I think what you're making is a very pertinent point. COVID has been a test for everybody. And we thought, even for us at the beginning, when the lockdown happened and how the world was going to look, we also had to look internal to see whether our business is going to get impacted or not, right? Because for the last 6-7 years, startups has been sort of looked very differently from different lenses. And we have been funding the startups from the lending perspective for the last now 4.5 years. We have done more than 50 transactions, deployed more than 500 crores to them, and we have worked across sectors. So we have been deeply entrenched in the sector. But when COVID happened, this is something nobody was obviously prepared for. We were also really, really worried, to be honest, to be seeing how the portfolio will be really performing in such a situation. And to our surprise, and even to a surprise to my other VC friends that I sort of keep interacting with, everybody's portfolio really bounced back very strongly. And that sort of talks about the importance of this entire ecosystem that our country has been able to build so far, and the way it is looking in the future. That we have a very strong ecosystem because of our IT services background, and people have that kind of entrepreneurship in our blood, I would say, where people are finding problems and finding ways to sort of solve their problems. And now capital is not anywhere an issue, right? When we were starting a business maybe in the 80s and 90s, to begin a business was a very different thing altogether. You need to have a very different kind of ecosystem to help you reach there. But now when anybody today can decide to start a business, and the way policies also have come in, and the way the ecosystem is looking at, the way the technology and the penetration has happened, if you're a good entrepreneur, there's no way anybody can stop you now, right? So we believe that.
And Ankur, I agree. It's about ideas, it's about problem solving, it's the right business model, it's the right team. But give us a sense through your own investments. You just talked about that you did 50 transactions, disbursed 500 crores. Give us the sectors that are seeing traction, and the sectors and companies that you funded.
Correct. So we have done even after COVID, sort of from the month of May, June, we started doing business again. We have already done more than 10 transactions in this year. More than 100 crores we have deployed in this time itself, right? So that sort of talks about the kind of sort of focus we have, and we believe that this is a time that we have to actually go out and support more and more businesses, because the businesses now are doing quite fantastic in multiple parameters. And there are multiple sectors that are doing well, right? And we have some of the sectors have been known very well to everybody, from an edtech space to e-commerce, whether they're logistics companies, health tech companies, as we were just talking about, companies which are focusing on the OTT space, whether you're talking about FMCG space. So all these businesses which are getting positive failures from COVID, they're doing quite well, right? We thankfully did not have much exposure to businesses which were in the travel and tourism space, right? And on those space, obviously, it will remain to be very, very, one has to be very careful about, right? And businesses like schools and etc. are also really suffering, right? Because they're not even able to really start their businesses. But there are businesses around that who are sort of being able to help those sectors come out, right? So we are always looking for those niche businesses where even after COVID goes away, their business is not like some kind of a fad, right? It is not just because TikTok got banned and certain businesses are doing well and we are sort of funding them a fad, right? Because we are lenders, we want sustainability, we want businesses that can keep growing month on month. do not burn too much cash, and we are much more conservative than our typical VC investor, right? So from that perspective, we are seeing that businesses, because now startups are not running behind valuations, they're running behind EBITDA, right? And that's what the real metric for any business should be. We are finding it at actually an excellent time for anybody to actually invest money, right? So, and that's what we are finding even with our investor base. People are looking to invest further with this asset class because many HNIs and family offices do not have exposure to startups, and they are opening up and warming up to this idea. So
And they don't want to be
that
left behind in the startup gold rush, which they feel they have been. If I
they
may
already
ask,
have been.
yeah, Ankur, if I may ask you, you were interacting with startups and funding them before COVID, right? Post-COVID, what is the change you notice in the startups' attitude towards their businesses and funding? For example, are the valuations more realistic? For example, are they more focused on profitability and sustainability and not just valuation? Give us a sense of the mindset change that COVID has brought in.
I think, everybody wants their business to last for next 2 to 3 years without any kind of funding, right? That is everybody's focus. That's like sort of dream for any startup, that I don't want to go and run behind money, right? So if you have built a business model which has unit economics and profitability in place, you have margins, you have customers paying for you, then there are enough VCs behind you, right? And if it's not obviously a Me Too business. So if you are being able to build that business, you know that you can finance your business from EBITDA, right? And then there are people like Black Soil who you can go to partner with on the debt side. So it can take care of your working capital requirements, can take care of your capex requirements. So you don't really need to keep spending on burn. So people have become very efficient, right? In our own portfolio, we have seen cost cutting happening between 20 to 30, 40% levels, right? So that is very critical, right? If you can sustain the business with lesser cost, then that means you were already bloated. So a lot of, it's what I would say, a check happened for everyone, right? For our business also.
And Ankur, there are two kinds of, I'm being an entrepreneur and somebody who's raised capital and raising capital. There are two kinds of thought processes that are always on. One is equity is more valuable than debt. You want to hold on to your equity. But at the same time, you don't want to take debt because sometimes in uncertain times, debt can be a mill around the neck. So how do you balance these two? Clearly, you are in favor of, debt because that's what your business model is. But for an entrepreneur, how does he or she take this decision of equity versus debt? Is there a playbook to that?
Yeah, so I think you cannot see the kind of startups we have, right? If you have to build a business, you cannot build everything on debt, right? So that I don't think even that will we also be comfortable with that. We always want a sort of a good mix of debt and equity. So capital structure should be very efficient, that you have enough equity on board and some amount of debt. Until you reach a level where you are a free cash flow company, then you can finance more on debt. So it is sort of a lever of business that has to go through. You go from step by step. You start either when you're a seed stage company, you're an angel company, you're a Series A company. That is not the time you take debt. So that is the time you only run on equity, right? You come to a debt kind of situation where your business model is very, very clear, and you want to go to a bank funding maybe a couple of years down the line. So that's sort of we become the bridge towards that. So it is a stage of business development on which you sort of come to debt. And obviously you cannot take too much debt. Even we do not want to give a debt that you cannot service. And obviously after the last 2 years, our economy has gone through multiple shocks, right? From IL&FS crisis to various banks having a problem to now even COVID. So even lenders are very, very conservative. We do not also like to start with a very large lend.
I agree with you, Ankur. And have the rate of debt come down? Has the rate of debt come down?
Tanvi, let's start with you now. Tell us about your business and how the pandemic has impacted you. What has been your recovery mode? And, tell us about some of the developments and lessons that have come handy as a result of this.
Sure. So I run a sustainable apparel brand called Tamarind Chutney. We are a social enterprise. Our mission is to improve the livelihoods of Indian artisans and also to reduce textile waste in India. We're a very young business. We started in September 2019. So we were barely running for 5 or 6 months before the pandemic hit. And obviously the impact on our sales was very, very severe. It basically almost dropped to nothing in the first month. And given that we're a social business, I think we had like multiple priorities. Our first priority was to look out for our artisans and tailors, our karigars. I think some of the artisans were lucky, they had prepaid orders, but many of them, their income just dried up immediately. So as a social business, we sort of, for the first 6 weeks of the lockdown, disbursed weekly like bank transfers to all our artisans to just ensure that they had enough to put food on the table and sort of to make up for the loss of livelihood. We did that with a little bit of our existing capital, and we also raised just money from our consumers, which was really encouraging. I think the Vocal for Local campaign really sort of made people aware of how small businesses and so even smaller artisans were really impacted. So that was one. And I think as we started adjusting to the new normal and realized that, okay, this is not just a 2-month event that we can bounce back out of and everything is business as usual, we had to really innovate on product. So we make, Indian, like we make apparel that sort of has very, festive connotations. And we really had to move away from that because, everyone is staying home. And while e-commerce was booming, personal care was booming, apparel was not booming. People don't need to buy clothes when they're staying home. So we really pivoted. We started making masks, started off just making cotton cloth masks for, retail and consumer purchase. But then we realized that it's even a great opportunity for B2B. So we've been supplying masks to small businesses and large businesses also that have essential workers that need to be out there, whether it's a delivery person or staff working in a factory. So that was one new area. I think masks are definitely our highest selling product. In terms of other product innovation, we had to again move away from the typical festive ethnic wear because there was just a lot of uncertainty on whether that would sell, and we moved to lounge wear, things that people could wear at home, whether it's a mix of, like, we would take a t-shirt which is like traditionally very Western and get our artisans to block print on it. So that was something that did really well. So it's been, the silver lining is that it's really pushed us to innovate and not just make products that we've known about for years. And I would say before the lockdown, since we were in new business, we would also rely a little bit on these bazaars and pop-ups for, customer acquisition. And obviously after the lockdown, we became 100% online, and all our sales come from our website and a couple of other platforms. So we've really begun investing in marketing, and, strengthening our digital presence, both on social platforms as well as just through our website and stuff. And I would say that obviously looking back, we had big plans for 2020, even raising capital was on the cards. But once the lockdown, hit and once the pandemic happened, it really forced us to be very, very disciplined and not just be like, hey, we're going to raise all this money and do this and do that. And I think it really forced us to look at our business, look at, like the unit economics of basically each product we're selling, and, focus on whatever signals we can get for product market fit. And yeah, we're really glad we've survived. A lot of small businesses haven't, and, we've grown actually a lot since March. And I think now 2021 is where we're more confident about our value proposition, and we can say, hey, we're willing to invest a little bit more and not just be relied on our being bootstrapped and just have our cash flows limit how much we can expand.
Right.
I want to ask you, Tanvi, the last 9 months have shown to us that every business needs to be a social impact business.
Yeah.
Just whether they're large businesses, startup businesses, mid-sized businesses, if we really want to be true to our mission of impacting lives, we have to be a social impact business. Now, you're a young entrepreneur. You started in 2019. For a lot of other entrepreneurs that we talk to, they may have seen lots of, kind of roller coaster kind of mechanism in their entrepreneurship journey. But for you, it is the first disruption. Now,
Right.
tell us, as an entrepreneur, how did you deal with it? What were the new ways of thinking that got added? What are your top lockdown lessons?
Sure. So, I think biggest one I would say is just to keep the mission of the company front and center. Like, there was a conversation that my co-founder and I, had in April where we were like, okay, we're still super new, and this seems like a very crazy time. Should we just shut shop? And I think both of us really were committed to this problem of, textile waste and artisan livelihoods, and our sort of our mentality was, hey, our artisans need us definitely more now than they did like 3 to 5 months ago.
Absolutely.
So I think the mission anchoring has been very, very helpful every time we have to like take a tough decision or do something that like might be good in the short term, but then you step back and you're like, oh hey, but this is not really good for the artisans, or this is not even good for business. So I think that's one. And second, I think, is to just, I would say, keep on like ideating, looking for new opportunities. We never thought we would go into B2B at all. Like we were just like, okay, we're making these beautiful products and people will buy them. We're not going to sell like white label to businesses. We're not going to like make things in mass because that's just not who we are. But like it was a desperate time. We really wanted cash flows. And people liked our product. We use 100% surplus fabric for these masks or things that we make. So it's fabric that might have ended up in a landfill if just because it was extra or something in an export batch. So just basically, I think that lesson for us was sort of, okay, when it looks like all the roads are blocked, just keep thinking, keep ideating, something will work. And that's also
build the road. I would say build the road. But let me go to Sanjivkumar at this point. Sanjivkumar, 20 years back, our role models were film stars. They were cricketers. They were authors. They were politicians. They were old world industrialists, being handed down wealth from generation to generation. In the last decade or so, our role models have become entrepreneurs. The Sachin Bansals, the Binny Bansals, the people on this panel, and nothing captures the spirit of an entrepreneurship than having a movie or content around entrepreneurship. Tell us a bit about what are you doing to be able to accelerate the drive of entrepreneurship in the country and to create more entrepreneurs.
Yeah, basically, coming from an entertainment industry, I was although the consumption of entertainment was at its peak because everybody were, at their homes locked down and things like that, but there was not great activity happening, as in the shoots and the production. So we came up with this idea. We were thinking about it, not that it's something new, but then we wanted to make this, a totally an Indianized version. Basically, where I'm coming from is, although the startup community is, there is a lot of things happening around the startup community. There's a lot of pitching, there's a lot of investment happening, but the process of startup, the way it is done, it's not still, gone into the tier 2 and the basically, we have this tendency, it's gone into our psyche that, as we grow, in my generation and even in the next, if somebody has finished their degree or, finish up their studies, they want to get into the employment mode, they get into a job kind of a factor. And this entrepreneurship as a spirit, as a thought process has not come in and it's not inculcated into the minds of, quite a lot of people. And I think that is where we come from, because, the basic factor, somebody says that you want to start a business model or an enterprise, karza lena padega, there is a bank or loan or, that's what it is. But then that is not what it is. Most of you here on the panel are into, a good entrepreneur mode. But I come from a background where I would want this whole process and this whole idea to go to the tier 2 and the tier 3 towns. I want to make this whole model into a proper kind of an general entertainment kind of a stuff, so that it reaches the drawing rooms and a lot of more people get inspired, to get into this mode. I believe that there are so many more ideas across India. We've gone through the entire application process and we've got some fantastic ideas from sectors which we thought doesn't exist. So, we are getting into that. We've got almost 10,000 plus. And some of them are really very good. So,
cracking up. Sanjeev, tell us our viewers as well that has the pandemic helped the entertainment industry as well? Because from what we hear and see, the OTT platforms have never had the kind of viewership that they have today. So when it comes to having new avenues, having new diversification areas for the entertainment industry, they are aplenty today.
True. I think we've learned, the basic part of the lockdown, I think, is more on the psyche. It is not much on the physicality of a lockdown. It has seeped into a little bit of the mindset mold. I think that is something that we need to break. And having said that, when you're pressurized and when you're, into the four walls, you want to come out, And when you fall down, the biggest thing is that you have to play to your strength. I think that strength is a great big community across India, which has got some of the most fantastic, ideas and who want to get into this enterprise mode. But I'm surprised that a lot of people don't know the avenues and where to go and get investments. This is coming from a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 towns, and they don't have a business model. They have an idea, they sit through the idea and don't get into the business model. So I thought, we should get this process onto a typical infotainment model where it gets into people and they understand this whole this whole process, and it becomes much more easier and seamless. That is the whole idea.
And Sanjeev, when you talk to them, what is their biggest need? Is it mentoring? Is it capital? It is go-to-market? What is their biggest need? I mean, you talked about they're not aware of the avenues open for funding and for accelerating entrepreneurship. And I would say when I started 2 decades back, there were much lesser avenues. Today, young adults are starting at 15, 16, 17 to be entrepreneurs, and they are literally changing the world with their impact. So clearly there are lots of avenues in terms of mentoring, funding, go-to-market available. So clearly that, tell us, when you've looked at your applicants, what is their single biggest need?
I think, mentoring is the most important part. I mean, there are some phenomenal ideas. And I've also, got into the investors community. We met some of the top VCs across India. And there's been the supply of money. I mean, I think money is not an issue. I think the connect where the idea gets, germed and it becomes refined. A business model.
It becomes refined and, so to say, ready to go to the market.
Exactly. That refinement is the problem area that I see, because there are some great ideas, but then if you want to put it into a business model and, get it right in terms of the valuation and the equity and the kind of, it generates, I think that is where, the problem area is. And I think good knowledge here in terms of the accelerator community and the incubation community, which has to get into the process. But the whole perspective that our initiative of Kuberan's House is basically to showcase this whole model has to be showcased in a very, a simplistic way. That is where we are coming from. We want to put this model into a very simplistic way wherever people understand that, their idea could be invested in. That is still a problem area in India. People think that, it's always a loan or, borrowing kind of a stuff. They do not realize and they don't understand that their idea could independently fetch investment on their own steam. So that is where we come from. That is where I think there is a big lacuna or a problem.
It's called Kuberan House. We know Lord Kuber is the Lord of Wealth, and house possibly comes inspired by the Big Boss house. Clearly, you're planning a reality show, and it would be interesting who are the judges and whether it's as interesting as a reality show on entrepreneurship should be, with all the dramas around raising capital. And, entrepreneurs are very passionate about idea. But at this point, let me ask Ankur, Inder, and you, what are your top lockdown lessons? Let's start with Ankur Bansal. Ankur, what has changed in you in the last 8-9 months that is here to stay with you throughout your journey?
I think health, family, I think that is the most important thing in life. I think everything else is secondary. That's, I think, maybe a very personal thing, but I think that's been a very critical thing because everything else sort of took a back.
Nobody could have said it better. Health, family. Go on. Just wanted to compliment that thought.
I think it speaks for everybody on this panel as well as I think worldwide, right? So I think for us, because everybody is running behind a lot of things, but it's important for us to stop and just look around what's happening around us. And apart from that, I think don't take anything for granted. I think it's become very critical from our business perspective. Whatever is doing well today does not mean will happen tomorrow. So one always have to have a backup plan in place. Or the other thing I would say, never think you have enough capital on yourself. So you have to have your business very resilient. To keep in mind that there could be certain things which are not foreseen. So you need to always have some capital, some kind of buffer capital available with you. So I think this will be top 3 lessons that one should keep in mind. And if I just want to add one more, is to sort of keep your team very, very motivated around you, especially now that you are all very far away from each other. And thankfully, we have all these technology solutions where we can talk to each other. But it's important to sort of keep everybody motivated, and being on the same page is very difficult, especially when all of us are used to sitting together in an office and working together. So I think some of these few things that I've really learned, and I believe that it's critical if you have to sort of move to the life to the next level. If you keep all these things in mind, I definitely would like to keep this in mind as we sort of take this to the next year, and how the business is going to perform. This should still be the fundamentals behind us.
Inder Maurya, what are your top lockdown lessons?
Unmute yourself, Inder. Unmute yourself. You'll have to unmute yourself, Inder. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Batra, this what the generic people have learned during this COVID time, we were taught all these things, how to be health conscious. So I would not say that I became aware of all these things. We were already educated in this process. But one thing which I learned is the power of telemedicine, which I learned during this time. Because, for us, it was just an academic subject when telemedicine was there. But when it got implemented, and then when the society took it as a part of it, and how we could, solve lots of issues, anxieties of COVID patients suffering from, like pulmonary fibrosis. So all this applied part of medicine, which we studied during, during our academics time, during my MD time, pandemic we had never seen to this great extent, which we read in the book. Those things we have learned it, and I'm very much glad that like the thing which we used to run the movement, like the government should be sensitized towards all these things, have been taken care of now. Now the masses are aware about the health insurance, about the power of the Indian healthcare structure. Once upon a time, we were called as a commission agents by the highest leadership in the country in his first term, and from that we started. Today we have reached to the level of being called as a corona warrior. So I think it's a big change which has taken place, and the masses have been sensitized towards it. And I'm very glad that the community is now aware, and now our work is also getting appreciated. So I think that is the part which I have learned during the COVID time. Yeah.
And Sanjivkumar, what are your top lockdown lessons? Clearly, all of us have learned new ways of being. We've added new thought processes, and clearly we've kind of examined ourselves critically to look at how we need to be working in this new abnormal. I don't call it the normal, I call it the new abnormal. Sanjivkumar?
I think the biggest learning is, initiating such wonderful ideas across India. We would like to be called a startup of all startups. That is how it is. I mean, it's basically a thought process. I think, a lot more ideas would come after they see ideas getting invested in, and, we would want to be the high tide to ride all the boats with us. So that is the thought process. I think, the Indian economy, that was the topic, I think would be revived from the grassroots if this happens. I think Make in India as an initiative reach the grassroots. I mean, that is where, that should come in. And it should come in the youth of the country. And if there's a dried up plant, I mean, you don't shower the whole plant. It has to reach the root. And that's where the whole process start. And that's where the entire prosperity. I don't know. I mean, it's going to take 90 days, 90 months, 90 this thing. But then I see that happening very, very quickly. I would want this to be created into the typical butterfly of, we Indians, when we like something, we like them immensely. It could be cricket, it could be politics, it could be cinema. I mean, there's one frenzy for it. I see that happening with the startup community with this. So, there needs to be a frenzy. And as Dr. Batra rightly put it, we don't have, we have icons in the startup community, but we need to build more. And this whole process has to be celebrated in the true sense of it. I mean, that's when it reaches the everything. I mean, like when cricket, it is a stakes and there's a celebration. I think whenever an idea gets invested, there needs to be celebration. And that, actually increases the entire frenzy. So that is something that I would want to bring into the system. And that's a learning basically.
Thank you, Sanjeev, for bringing the life of entrepreneurs into focus, on enabling more entrepreneurs. But clearly, if we have to solve that problems that India has, that Bharat has, we clearly need more entrepreneurs. And if I can give an analogy of cricket, over the last 2 decades, India's top cricketers have not only come from Delhi, Bombay, they've come from Jharkhand. Dhoni came from Ranchi. Even if you take the analogy in entrepreneurship, some of India's finest entrepreneurs in the last 2 decades have not only come from Delhi. Look at Vijay Shekhar Sharma. He's an Aligarh boy, and I can give you examples. So clearly, this bridge between Bharat and India needs to be created, and more people need to be brought into entrepreneurship. Tanvi, you represent the young millennials on the panel, and you represent young adults who have become entrepreneurs early on in life. Tell us, what are the different thought processes you have with somebody who's at 40 and starting a company?
Sure. I mean, I think I'm sure like different people in my age also have different motivations. So my father's an entrepreneur, so it was never something foreign and stigmatized for me. And also given that my personal views that I come from a lot of financial privilege, I wanted to do something that gives back. So it was always about social entrepreneurship. And I think that means to me is like you're not running behind VCs or valuations. You're, taking it a little slower and looking at the impact before growth, which is a really tough trade-off, honestly. But I think that there are more and more millennials who are socially conscious and are thinking of these different kinds of businesses. And then, of course, there are many, many people in my generation who want to start a really fast-growing companies. And I think it's very encouraging for them to have mentors and role models that have done this like over the last couple of decades to sort of, help them in terms of networking, access to capital and all. So obviously, like, while there are many more companies and you have to I think, find your niche, and that's hard. There is also a lot of help and support, which is encouraging.
Good. Well, we almost run out of time, Anurag. Should we, in fact, ask all our panelists, when do they anticipate the economy to come back? Let's start with Ankur. Ankur, when do you think the economy is going to be back to its pre-COVID era?
I think I'm thinking it's going to be the second quarter of next calendar year. We should start seeing things getting much better. But if you see the current indicators, already it's heading in that direction. If you look at stock market as an indicator, it seems that people are expecting everything to be back to its glory days, or maybe better than that, because our economy was already not in great shape before the lockdown happened. So right. We are believing, I think things are looking quite better. And for us, if I look only at the startup economy, we are already back to pre-COVID levels already. So from the specific sector that we're looking at.
Ankur, why do you think it will be coming back then in full bloom? Qualify it even more deeper.
I think the way the businesses have been going on, people have learned to live with COVID. I think that's the reason I'm seeing. So everybody.
Okay.
So Inder Maurya, when will the economy be back in full bloom?
Well, I think I would agree with Ankur. Even the RBI has indicated the same thing. That's the reason they revised their growth from minus 9.5 to 7.5. So I think I would agree with Ankur. And at the same time, as far as health is concerned, I think it is a blossoming time for us, because as far as, when I was previously also talking about telemedicine, healthcare, insurance going, people are now opting for more of health insurance, becoming more aware of that, what the health implication part of it. So all these things I think will go in a long way. And the economy is going to come back, because it was just, was a transient phase. And in the record time, the way the vaccine has come into the thing, I think that will also boost up the system. The anxiety which was there is already shrunk in. I'm seeing in Bombay, people are going, as regular it has started, people going into the buses, crowd and everything. So I think in this fashion, as far as healthcare is concerned, another thing, we are back to normal. And once the full blown administration of the vaccine will start, and we are also working very closely with the municipal corporation for administering COVID vaccine. That is our way of contributing to the community. So I think with this thing, with the vaccine coming in and the economy bouncing back, so it will surely in the second quarter of 2021, I'm hopeful for that.
All right. Tanvi, what do you think? When are we going to be back?
I think I'm definitely the most bearish. I don't think for the next year, probably 2022, just because it's going to be a few months until the vaccine sort of actually gets administrated. And, just from the experiences of all the small artisans and stuff we work with, it's just going to be like very, very long until the impact sort of reaches tier 2, tier 3 cities. And yeah, I think just minus 23%, 23% contraction is just like a huge shock. And it's just going to take time to come back to anything that was pre that.
It is.
Sanjivkumar, you have the final word from what you see in terms of the ideas coming to you and what you see around yourself as an entrepreneur. When do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom?
I'm not a numbers guy, but I want to be bullish. I think, it starts today. and it can really start. I think it's in the mindset. I think there is a lot of inspiration that has to go into people, and the entire the machinery, the government, the investment, the infrastructure has actually to get on. I think it is going to. I mean, basically second quarter, I would agree, rather, but then I think it can start immediately, and it's basically a mind game, and I think we should get over it quickly.
Right, Anurag, I want your thoughts as well. When do you think the economy is going to be back, and why?
Vineet, it's a question that is a $1 billion question, literally. But if you look at November and October numbers, the economy was back in full bloom. Of course, we know the wedding season, Diwali, IPL, pent-up demand, they all contributed. December's numbers are yet to be out. But when you go out on streets, I went to Lucknow on Saturday, I went to Bombay the week before. It looks like life's back to normal. Of course, with social distancing, masks, and sanitization. Once the vaccine is announced and its distribution starts, I think it will give a lot of comfort to people, and that may bring a lot of sectors back into play. And second is the government through the budget on 1st Feb may actually on the demand side put a huge impetus. So if that happens, I would say, let's say it happens in February, 3 months from then, I expect the economy, March, April, May, maybe from June, I expect the economy to be coming back to normal levels. That's my sense. And I think I'd be right on that.
Anurag, one last question before we in fact end the show. There's this new strain of COVID-19 is threatening the world. Do you think that is going to have any bearing on our economy, which is perhaps slowly and very steadily coming back to normal?
We need, as I said, a lot of people said it was a, black swan event. I would like to believe it was a gray rhino event. So we have to be ready for COVID-like, diseases, and we have to live with them. So in our behavior, in our way we interact with people, the word social distancing itself is an oxymoron. You can't be social and be distant, but I think our life has become oxymoronish. But I want to be optimistic and say that in the last 7 months, we've been able to find a vaccine to a new strain. So clearly the advances in medicine and the fact that already researchers are in play, we will be able to find and respond to this new strain. I am hopeful. And if you follow the news from the medical researchers, they are confident for this new strain, they'll be able to find a vaccine. So I don't think we need to worry or panic on that count.
All right, on that prudent and insightful note, we're going to end today's show. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of this amazing chat.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.